Hello, and welcome to Talking Toddlers, where I share more than just tips and tricks on how to reduce tantrums or build your toddler's vocabulary. We're going to cover all of that, I assure you. But here, our goal is to develop clarity, because in this modern world, it's truly overwhelming, especially during these past 2 years. This podcast is about empowering moms to know the difference between fact and fiction, to never give up, to tap into everyday activities so your child stays on track. He's not falling behind, he's thriving through your guidance. We know that true learning starts at home, and Talking Toddlers, this podcast helps you develop that with clarity, confidence, and clear communication. So let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Talking Toddlers. I'm Erin Heyer, your host, and I will continue this conversation on the science of play because it's that important. Our children, our babies, our toddlers, our preschoolers really learn through play. And I've shared over the last couple of episodes how we as the adults, whether we're a parent or a therapist, a teacher, a caregiver, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, the more that we understand how our environment can support or inhibit growth and learning and well-being, the more we can help our kids be the best version of themselves. And yes, I specialize in early speech and language development and how human communication, verbal talking, lays the foundation to literacy. And I've talked about that, and I will continue because that's really kind of my jam. But these systems, these human systems, are so interconnected, interwoven. It's a network upon network upon network. And we build these networks. Remember, I've shared with you over and over again how babies come into this world, they're placed in our arms, and they're under construction. Their brains are built. They're not born. I'm using all of these cute little phrases, but it's important that we keep this in mind when we sit down to engage with our child, whether it's to build blocks or to help them learn how to feed themselves, or their first words in the bathtub, splash or wet or bubbles, pop, 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 pop. All of this is integrated through their daily experiences. So I decided to dedicate all of September, and who knows, maybe even October, on the topic of play, because it's so vital, but it's also complex that parents and caretakers, we need to really understand what we're doing on a daily basis. And that we, I've always said we can take everyday activities, turn it into a learning experience or a therapeutic experience, but we can also make it playful. So to continue with the 7 different types of play that Dr. Stuart Brown has introduced to the study of play, but also to us folks who take the science and research and the theories and try to apply them into everyday life experience to help really make them user-friendly, I guess. So I've talked about attunement play, body and movement play, object play, and social play. And I really touched upon that deeply or more intricately last session, because social play is really a big piece of what we, I think, as a social environment is struggling with, and to understand how we can help our kids become social human beings, and that we still need to respect how we differ from one another, and that some people are social creatures and chatty Cathys and really feed off of being around other kids. And some of us don't, that we don't really need a whole heck of a lot of friends, that one or two is fine, or an older sibling as a playmate is fine, that we need to understand how being exposed to all of these different play styles and play opportunities help shape us. But we also learn from ourselves that what makes us feel good inside, what lights us up, how do we really... part of the true definition of play is that you lose a sense of time, that you're in it, and everything else falls away, right? That whether you're building blocks, or whether you're climbing up a tree, or whether you're telling a story with your girlfriend, or reading a book, or working out, or riding your bike, or gardening, or any of these play-like experiences, that we lose it. We lose time, and we're just in it for pure pleasure, and we can't wait to get back to it. And that's the true definition of play, that it comes from within. It gives us great satisfaction, and it drives us to do it again and again, that we're motivated to do it. And some people will look at reading a book as hell, and some people look at it as pure joy. Some people look at, weightlifting or heavy climbing as hell, and other people will look at it as just great satisfaction. Some people look at meditation and yoga as a painful experience, and you just can't stop the chatter in your head. Although I do think we all should continue to try to practice that mindfulness. But on the same token, some people, that's what they find pure joy and bliss in. And other people say, no, I can quote unquote meditate on my bicycle, or rock climbing, or in the garden, or I have to be doing something. So that's that type of play where the body and movement is involved. And so that's a different kind of play that helps speak to ourself, our soul, our spirit. And so we do, as the grown-ups, as the adults who are in charge, stewarding these beautiful young souls, we have to respect that we come to this world with different frameworks, different rhythms to ourselves, but to always give the very young kids opportunity, and not push it, but expose them and gently encourage them. And maybe they'll build a bigger muscle. Like, I know a lot of adults, including my husband, that, really doesn't care for large crowds, doesn't care for a lot of people around them, but they're very good at adapting, that when they go to work or when they go to a social event, he can talk, he can chatter, he has a wide breadth of information and knowledge and life experience, that he can talk to the contractor, he can talk to the engineer, he can talk to the school teacher, he can talk to the yoga instructor. He has a lot of information and life experience that he can pull from, and he feels very comfortable during small talk. And yet, if he had his druthers, he wouldn't do that. But he has learned that skill, and I respect that. One of the things that I have trouble with, even as an adult, is that small talk, that I can get so stuck in my own kind of play, which is, studying the brain and studying early development and studying human behavior and cause and effect and all of this, that sometimes that can be very, very limiting. And I don't have a lot of worldly experience in other topics, such as movie or history or engineering or politics or any of those kinds of things, that what really speaks to me is science-based learning. And that really just lights me up. And so we have these different elements to us individual humans, and it's really important that we watch our children grow into themselves through a wide variety of experiences. And so I've touched upon 4 of the 7 different types of play. And I do want to just emphasize, please go back and listen to the previous episodes if you haven't already. There's a little background information on Dr. Stuart Brown's work and how he has spent his entire career, 50 years, studying adults and some of our stress levels, our depression, our, antisocial behaviors, and connected it to our early childhood on play. And then he's also looked at some of the world's best, Nobel Prize winners and top creators and top performers, and looked at their history, their childhood on play and how that was or wasn't supported naturally or very purposefully. So to bring it back to today, 2022, I dove into this maybe 6-8 months ago in the research of the science of play, because I knew as a world, as we started to come out of this pandemic and kids started to go back to school, I knew that we were going to have to add a lot more understanding of where the kids are going to struggle, learning how to be more social, learning how their separation, their lack of spontaneous play, their lack of freedom really has negative consequences. And I hear this behind the scenes with teachers at the preschool level, teachers in the young elementary and middle schools and high schools, that our kids now are presenting with many, many more social anxiety, depression, fear-based resistance to being kids and being outgoing and being spontaneous. And so we have to respect that and help bridge this world that we live in. And the more that we can understand what natural play is and how human beings thrive, that Dr. Brown's work really suggests that we as social animals are the most complex in our play, and that it can make or break our emotional well-being and our willingness to open up in different environments, whether it's work related or social environments or relationships and connection with other beings. So let me just list out what the research has really helped us begin to understand. And it's just the beginning. And as we know, change is hard. School systems are locked in their way. Educational institutions who are teaching our teachers and teaching our therapists, and that takes a long time to turn around and to understand how perhaps we've swung the pendulum to structured, formal, limited classroom environments and less free-flowing, spontaneous, unstructured play. But the diverse body of research really suggests that babies need attunement play, like I mentioned, that play builds more complex brains, that babies learn through movement. And I've studied this for the last 20, 25 years when car seats became mobile. So you could remove the car seat instead of just removing the baby and carrying them or walking with the toddler, that we then kept them in that car seat, right? We could snap it in and out of the little box in the back of the seat. And then we carry the kids and then we put them down and we visit, or we go into the store and we put them on top of the cart and we push them around. And we realized that the lack of movement with these toddlers, with these 1, 2, and 3-year-olds, that they were in car seats or in a carriage and didn't get that free expression, that free movement of climbing in and out of the seat or walking with you or exploring the environment physically on their own, was inhibiting some of their cognitive and language and social skills. We know this for sure. So play and movement equals learning. Play develops that emotional intelligence, and we looked at that through rough and tumble play. That play deprivation, that Dr. Brown's work really can have tragic consequences, and that overall, as babies and toddlers and young adults and older adults, that if we continue to have play in our daily lives, that we tend to then gravitate toward careers and jobs that speak to our hearts, that speak to what makes us light up, and that quote unquote work is not work, but I enjoy it. Like, I have felt so privileged for the last 35 years to wake up every day and go to a job, quote unquote, a job or work that I love. Yes, I get to get on the floor and play with kids, and that's fun. But it's also stressful, right? Kids have tantrums, they have meltdowns. I have to give, very, very personal feedback to the parents. I have to help parents understand that their child is struggling and it's not just a phase. I have to help parents really face the fact that their child is not developmentally on track, but there are things that we can do about it, and let's get motivated together to build a healthier lifestyle habit and routine so your child can then begin to prosper and thrive and build their strengths of human communication and socialization and connectivity. But all of that hard work is balanced or has this ebb and flow because I walk into my office every day knowing that I provide something that is worthy, that it gives me joy to watch a child over the course of a few weeks, a few months, find his or her voice, to watch a child who was afraid to, make a mistake, and now they're like, whoops, no big deal. I can pick it up and clean it up and we can go on. To watch a child really connect their world and create conversational flow and laugh and be joking and have a sense of humor. It is so empowering. And I just think that people who have to go to a work or a job every day and hate it or cringe, that's painful. That our work, what we give out in this universe, what we share among our other humans should come from a place of joy, and that, getting on the floor and playing with kids wouldn't speak to some people, like, my brother who's a technician, or my husband who likes to build things. Getting on the floor and playing is not necessarily what makes their heart sing or jump for joy, right? So let me jump back in and I'll finish up these 7. I know it's taken me a couple of different episodes, but it's so rich with information and so rich with practical application. But the number, I guess it would be number 5, it's really pretend and imaginative play. If you think about it, it typically starts around 2. That's when they have more language and they begin to tell stories. It's pretty fragmented, though, at this stage. It's not complete. There's no beginning, middle, and an end, but there are parts that they're really trying to express themselves, and they're eager to share. They practice their language. Around their 2nd birthday, they have 50 words to 200 words. They're starting to put words together for phrases, and they really feel connected with other humans. So they want to use their verbal talking skills to engage, and they see the power in holding somebody else's attention and to share what they have done or what they learn or what they are experiencing. And over time, kids develop the skills to create a complete narrative. But in those preschool years, in those toddlers, 2, 3, 4, it can still be disjointed with which characters are which and what are the motives and is there a purpose to all of this. But the structure is there, and they're really beginning to understand this whole kind of pretend play. And through the research is really showing us that children do this worldwide, that it's an integral aspect of their play skills. And I love watching kids in the preschool setting or at their home really use their voice to explain what they're doing, whether it's with the baby dolls or the trucks or the dinosaurs. And think of it also when you were a kid, that kids do participate in these play adventures, right? That there's a little bit of realness and a lot of make-believe, and that, like I remember as a kid, again, we didn't have much. We were kind of this poor military family, but we had each other, and we had pretty creative minds, right? That we would dress up, and that my brothers were often in capes and they were jumping from the couch to the coffee table, that they often hid behind doors and we would scare each other and jump out. And the more I kind of thought about this, all of this pretend and kind of dressing the parts and play acting, that's what Halloween is all about, right? Dressing up and pretending to be somebody else. And at the same time that it brings in the celebratory and the whole group mentality, right? Going trick-or-treating, and that kids delight it. And then I was surprised when I went off to college that college kids, had it too. Where I grew up, you kind of stopped when you're 10, 12 years old. But off in college, I realized that we too continued that play. In my, experience, we kind of stopped in middle school, but it was interesting. And I had a little difficult time dressing up as, a 20-something-year-old, but my girlfriends were really, really into it. And so this whole power of human imagination really helps the creativity or the creators, right? And the innovators to build. And this is what's happened, how our modern world has unfolded, right? We have these creators, we have these innovators to build things. Some people look at like the Wright brothers. How in the world did they really believe in their heart of heart that they could build this machinery and take flight? How did the home computer come to be? Look at our smartphone. Look at, I look at modernization and I think of all the appliances in our house. I love the vacuum cleaner. I love dishwashers and washing machines. But look at the bridges and the towers and the skyscrapers, that they had this imagination. And it starts as a toddler. It starts, some people are just wired that way and they can't help themselves. And those people make big, huge changes, like the Wright brothers and Steve Jobs and all of that. But the average people like you and me, that helps create our home. It helps create, our organization. It helps maybe build businesses. And so all of this imagination really starts when we put that cape on and we believe that we can fly, or we hold that baby and we talk to her and rocking her to sleep, or our bears talk to our bunny rabbits and, hide from the monsters. All of that imagination really needs to be supported and encouraged to let it flow, let it really be who they are. And who knows, it might be the next Steve Jobs, but it has to begin with this unrealistic expectation, this beautiful imagination. So the sixth play type is storytelling or narrative play. And this form of play expands the stream of consciousness. And it could be us, the parent or the caretaker, telling a story to a child. It could be a child making up their own pretend story or stories. It could be, relating to a book or a movie that they watched. But it's really a narrative story outside of them. And keep in mind, as I mentioned, I think last week, that we bring different interests, different strengths and proclivities to the table at birth. And our job as the grown-ups is to support. We don't know, looking at that newborn, whether she's going to be interested in building bridges. We don't know if that boy is interested in writing stories. We don't know if they're going to be, gardeners or neurosurgeons or teachers or, house builders or house painters or anything in between. So we have to give them all that opportunities to be themselves in a wide variety of play, and we, as the stewards, kind of watch them and respect who they are in any given situation and encourage them. If they do feel uncomfortable, then, back off a little bit and then encourage them again. But in the storytelling and narrative play, this is where I look at, book reading and shared book stories. And yes, you can watch it on screens and talk about it, but you probably know me by now that I'm not a big screen fan for kids, under 6 or under 7, and certainly not, at the preschool level. And that's a different conversation. But in stories and book reading and shared, you can talk about it. You can relate it. You can, if there's an event going on, whether say you're going to go to a wedding and it's their first big wedding, you can, find a story about it. You can find a story just about anything nowadays, whether you're going to get a new puppy or you lost a puppy, right? Or you're, going to get a new baby, or you're going to go to preschool for the first time. So this can be outside of your immediate environment, but you can imagine, you can relate to the characters. It's really important that little kids, whether they're 2 or 4 or 6 or 10 or 12, they're still little, right? They're still a work in progress. They can imagine through these characters. They can understand and have that theory of mind, looking at somebody else's perspective, and then try to bring it back home. But the whole storytelling and narrative play, it really expands their thinking, as I said in the beginning, the stream of consciousness. And so just keep that in mind throughout your day, and use that as a tool to help build their imagination. And then the 7th is transformative or integrative and creative play. And this is the kind of play that is real fantasy and transcends reality, right? And not all of us can go there, but you can watch a child with the imagination when they're much younger, and then they go and they start reading these fantasy books, right? Like Harry Potter. That was pretty brilliant. So at this point, I want to ask you, just how seriously do you take your child's play time? And I think most of us, if we're honest, I think our answer to that would be, we don't really take it very seriously. Again, I have met with hundreds of families over the years, and I think kind of on a superficial level, most parents get that, a 1, 2, 3, 4-year-old has to play, right? Because they can't do much else. They can barely stand up and walk and are just learning to begin to verbally communicate. But beyond that, then we get, as I said, in our modern world, we've pushed academics down into that 4-year-old even. And I think we forget about play, that play is just letting the kid move about and then come back as quickly as possible. Again, witnessing the change over the last 3.5 decades in our daycare centers, in our preschool classrooms, in our kindergartens. And so I want you parents to really, really think about this. And I've given you these kind of 7 stages or 7 different types of play that we know based on research how it helps shape the brain and shape the human spirit and their feelings of themselves. But also, if you Google any of this, you're going to see little different language elements to it. Like a colleague of mine put together this list here. Let me just kind of share it with you. You have independent play, messy play, dramatic and imaginative play, physical play, sensory play, cooperative play, symbolic play. Those are pretty common in a preschool setting. But as parents, I want you to think about your day, your time with them, and then evaluate the daycare or the preschool setting. And I do think that we're doing a true disservice to our children, to their social, emotional well-being, to their cognitive and intellectual development. Because without recognizing that play is critical to all of these human traits that we have to prioritize it. We really do. We have to think about it. And I'm going to continue this conversation because it's that important, because the shift is getting bigger and bigger with pushing academics and letters and numbers and sitting and listening. And we need to help that 2 or 3 or 4-year-old sit and listen to a story and then run about and play. And, in previous episodes, I talked about how to use different techniques to help build their shared story times, right? And that some kids need to fidget with things when you're reading a story. Some kids need to stand on maybe a balance beam or a balance board when they're listening to a story. Some kids literally walk back and forth when I'm telling a story, and then they stop and look at the picture if I show them. So there's so many different elements to this that we have to really evaluate almost on a daily basis. Where is my child today? How is he waking up to his day, and what do we need to adjust in order to meet him where he is? And play, again, not only lays the foundation to attention and cognitive skills and language and all of that, but it really, and I've missed this myself too over the years, but it really helps shape us as how we look at our life, right? What jobs do we take? What work, that understanding how work can be playful and that it can light us up, whether you're a creative type or you're a thinker and you like to write, or whether you like to work around other people or don't like to work around other people. One of the things that I learned big time in my 20s was, I didn't like a lot of red tape. I liked full autonomy, and that's what's helped me build my practice over the years and really love what I do every single day, because I could be honest and open with each and every parent. I could sit down there and say, you asked me, you're paying for my professional opinion, and I can lay it all on the table. I didn't have any red tape. This was the best information that I can share with you. I don't have to, filter what I say. And then you as a parent can take it or leave it. You can think about it. There's no judgment. Whether you wanted to follow through with my recommendations, whether you wanted to think about it and I'll get back to you, whether you wanted to jump in, with both feet. You came to me, I gave you my best information at the time that I knew, whether I was 30 or 40 or 50. And that's what really helped me be the best therapist that I could be, to be true and integral with myself and with you as the family who's seeking advice and questioning, what can I do to ease some of this discomfort? What can I do to help close this gap? Am I in the right learning environment for my child? Am I doing enough, or what am I doing that could be omitted? But the whole point to all of this is that so many people go to a job every single day and hate it and feel like I should be doing something different, or this isn't speaking to me, or this is just to get a paycheck, or this is just, so I can retire, or I'm living for the weekends, or I'm living for my vacation. And I want our kids, our future kids, to be encouraged to really find what speaks to them, to be the truest that they can be, and that we're all, shaped a little bit differently, and we bring different strengths and weaknesses to the table. And yes, we might have to hone some quote unquote skills. And I haven't really talked deeply about like what is reading and writing, and, can you improve some of those skills, or are you just, born that way? And that's a whole different conversation. But I believe that it starts in utero. It starts with attunement, right? Getting in sync and feeling that pure joy of just physically holding your baby, looking into her eyes, hearing that first giggle, hearing their first voice, and recognizing, we're going to do this together, and it's going to be fun and hell some days, and joyful and complicated and messy and exhausting, and just pure bliss. So all of those feelings, frustration, eagerness, all of that. I remember thinking, and I've said this dozens and dozens of times, that like when my daughter was younger, I couldn't wait until she went to bed, and then I couldn't wait until she got up in the morning. And it was, in that quietness where I realized what pure love was, and that's what I want for you, to look at your child as they're sleeping or as they're transitioning into, sleep state, and just can't wait to see who they become. And we are the stewards. I believe God gave them to us to guide, to nurture, to love. Not necessarily to, cut out in my image, but to really be their own person. And we can do this. So let's do it through play. Let's do it through joy. Let's watch them in different environments and see what they're bringing to the table, and try to really respect who they are. And at the same time, giving them as many opportunities as you can to explore other possibilities, if that makes sense. So on that, I would like to conclude this episode with a quote from Fred Rogers, where he says, "Play is often talked about as if it were a relief from serious learning. But for children, play is serious learning. Play is really the work of childhood." And that's what I've always said. It's their job to go out and get dirty and get messy. It's their job to learn how to listen to a story and engage with you. It's their job to touch things and build things and mess things up. It's their job to make mistakes and learn from them. It's their job to laugh so hard that it hurts their sides. And so all of this is serious, but it's also playful. And that's what it's all about. So thanks again for spending your precious time with me. And please don't forget to subscribe And if you feel like you really are getting a lot out of these, then go ahead and write a review. I would really welcome that because that helps push my message out. And you know how the algorithms work and how parents need, good, solid advice. Parents need to know that they're not crazy, that they're not in it on their own, and it's easily overwhelmed to just Google something. But I'm here each and every week to try to filter through some of the research to help you understand how I've applied this in every day with hundreds and thousands of kids and families, and how this modern world is complicated, and that we together can figure out a healthier, more balanced, richer, playful path together. So go out there, be with your kids, be present, be playful, be purposeful, and be the parent that you were meant to be. Okay, God bless, and I'll see you next week.